When you've been married for nearly 2 decades, you learn to read between the lines. The pause before a sentence, the smile that doesn't reach the eyes, the tone of a text message. That's what happened the night my husband Derek messaged me. "Working late again, love you." I stood in the hospital break room, still in my scrubs, holding my phone tighter than I should have. The words were normal, sweet, even, but they tasted sour in my mouth. Something felt off, like a key turned halfway in the lock, and then stopped. "Where are you watching from, and what time is it right now?" Let me know in the comments. I want to know who's up with me, hearing this. Maybe I was just tired. I'd been on my feet for 12 hours, checking vitals, comforting parents, helping sick kids. It was one of those emotionally draining days where a toddler's fever spikes, and a worried mom looks at you like you're the only hope left in the world. But still, Derek's message wouldn't leave my mind. It wasn't unusual for him to work late. He's a real estate agent, and open houses or late evening client meetings came with the job. I'd never questioned it before. I trusted him. Or maybe I trusted the version of him I believed in. I got home around 8:15 p.m. Eli, our 14-year-old son, was watching something on YouTube. Earbuds in, backpack on the floor, shoes kicked off by the door. He looked up at me, a little surprised. "Dad's not home yet?" I asked, peeling off my coat. Eli shrugged. He said he had a showing, but it's weird. He left super early this morning and didn't come home after school like usual. That stuck with me. Derek always made a point to stop by the house between appointments, usually to shower, grab a snack, or check in with Eli. He was one of those overly present dads on purpose, I think to make up for how much he worked. I tried to brush it off. Dinner was quiet. I reheated leftover chicken Alfredo and sat beside Eli, scrolling through social media with half interest. Every minute that passed without another message from Derek knotted something deeper in my stomach. It wasn't anger. It was dread. By 9:30 p.m., I texted him again. "Hey, everything okay? Should I wait up for you?" No reply. At 10:15, Tamika called. My best friend. The one who always knew when to check in. "You sound tense. What's up?" she asked. I told her everything. The late text, the weird gut feeling, the missed check-in, even Eli's comment. She was quiet for a beat, then said something that made my heart stall. "Vanessa, I saw Derek's car earlier tonight." I froze. "What? Where?" "On Elmhurst, right across from those new condos. You know, where that boutique design firm is? Rachel's place. Rachel." The name dropped like a hammer in my chest. Rachel Wynn. Elegant, charming, and flirtatious in the way that makes your skin itch. She staged a few of Derek's listings last year. I'd only met her once, but I remembered the way she'd looked at him like he was already hers. I stood up from the couch. My blood ran cold. Tamika kept talking, but I couldn't hear the words anymore. I was already forming a plan, and I wasn't going to wait until morning. Derek and I met when we were both in our late 20s. I was finishing up my residency at Mount Sinai in Chicago, drowning in sleep deprivation and takeout, and he was a smooth-talking real estate agent who sold million-dollar homes like they were Girl Scout cookies. He walked into the ER with a fractured wrist after trying to hang his own chandelier. I treated him. He asked me out that same night with one hand still in a sling. We were opposites, but that's what made it exciting. I was disciplined, methodical, careful with my words. He was spontaneous, social, and full of charm. Derek could talk his way into or out of anything. That used to make me laugh. I thought it was confidence. I thought it meant strength. We married 2 years later. Bought our first home in Naperville, a quiet suburb with good schools, tree-lined streets, and neighbors who waved without being nosy. I just accepted a pediatric position at a nearby hospital, and Derek's real estate business was booming. On paper, we were the dream couple, successful, educated, driven, but life isn't paper. It folds, it creases, And sometimes it tears before you realize what caused it. When our son Eli was born, I thought Derek had changed for the better. He doted on him, read parenting books, installed baby monitors, and ran late-night bottle runs like a champ. He even started turning down evening appointments to be home more, at least in the beginning. But over time, that started to fade. Derek's work became more demanding, or so he said. There were more evening showings, more urgent client meetings. He became emotionally distant, like someone dimmed the lights behind his eyes. Still, I kept brushing it off. I was working 10-hour shifts myself. We were both exhausted. I thought we were just in survival mode like most couples with demanding careers and a teenager. But what hurt the most was how he changed toward me. The compliments stopped. Conversations got shorter. Sometimes he'd leave a room just as I entered, like I was interrupting something he didn't want me to see. I can't tell you exactly when I stopped feeling like a wife and started feeling like a roommate, but I knew it when it happened. And then there was Rachel. She wasn't some random stranger. She worked with Derek. She was always dressed like a magazine cover and had a way of laughing just a second too long at his jokes. I noticed it. I didn't say anything because that's what trust is, right? Giving someone the benefit of the doubt, not accusing them just because your instincts twitch. But instincts are funny. They don't go away. They wait. They watch. They whisper to you at night when everything's quiet and you're staring at the ceiling, asking yourself if you're imagining it. That night, after Tamika called and said she'd seen Derek's car near Rachel's boutique office, something broke inside me. Not like a crack. More like a clean snap, like the silence between two thunderclaps. I realized I didn't really know who I was married to anymore. And yet, part of me still hoped there was some innocent explanation, a business meeting that went long, a last-minute change of venue, anything. Because as much as I wanted answers, I was terrified of the truth. That night, I put Eli to bed, grabbed my coat, and headed out into the November cold. I had a gut feeling this wouldn't be just another evening. It would be the night that changed everything. The drive across town felt like it took hours, though it was only 20 minutes. My fingers gripped the steering wheel so tightly that the skin along my knuckles had gone pale. The cold outside had seeped into the car, but I didn't turn on the heat. I didn't want to feel comfortable. I didn't want to be calmed. I needed to feel this unease. As I neared Rachel's office building, I slowed down. There it was, Derek's Lexus, parked just outside the glass-paneled boutique where Rachel ran her real estate staging business. The lights were on. It was almost 9:30 p.m. For a moment, I just sat there, staring. My breath fogged the windshield. I could feel my pulse in my ears, a steady drumming that made everything else feel distant. Maybe it's nothing, I whispered to myself, but the words tasted like metal. I pulled around the back, parked out of sight, and waited. I wasn't proud of this. I'm a pediatrician, a mother, a grown woman, but I couldn't go home, not with this weight in my chest. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Finally, the front door opened. Derek stepped out, jacket in hand, laughing. Rachel followed. She was in heels and a deep burgundy dress. Not business attire, not casual either. Her hand lingered on Derek's arm just a little too long. And then, without even glancing around, she leaned in and kissed his cheek. Not a thank you for your help kind of kiss. A kiss that said, "This is familiar." I felt my throat close. I turned away and ducked lower in the driver's seat. My hands shook. My stomach turned. I didn't cry. Not yet. Not in that moment. I drove away, hands trembling on the wheel. I didn't know where I was going. I ended up in the parking lot of a grocery store, sitting in the dark, trying to breathe. How long? Was it recent? Had it been going on for months? Years? I thought about Eli. About how he'd started asking why Dad always missed game nights, why he never picked him up from school anymore. I thought about how I always defended Derek. Daddy's busy. He works hard so we can have this nice house. I said it like a badge of honor. Now it felt like a shield I'd held up blindly. And the worst part? I still wasn't sure what I would do next. I could confront him. I could throw it all in his face. But part of me didn't want to fight. I wanted the truth. I wanted to hear him say it so I could stop spinning in this limbo of lies and suspicion. I drove home just after midnight. Derek wasn't back. I sat in the living room, in silence, staring at the family photo hanging on the wall, me, Derek and Eli in front of the fireplace last Christmas. Smiling. Perfect. A lie framed in oak. At 12:41 a.m., I heard the front door open. Derek tiptoed in like a teenager sneaking past curfew. I didn't say a word. I watched him from the dark. He didn't notice me. He walked right past the living room and up the stairs. And that was the moment I knew I couldn't keep pretending. I had to do something. But whatever came next, it had to be on my terms. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed next to Derek, staring at the ceiling as his slow, steady breathing filled the room. I wondered how he could sleep so peacefully, how he could come home, climb into our bed, and pretend like nothing was wrong. I had spent years covering for him emotionally, socially, even professionally. I made excuses for his absences, filled in the gaps when he forgot family events, even smoothed over his rude moments in front of Eli like it was nothing. I told myself it was what good wives did, what strong women did. But strength doesn't mean silence. By 5 a.m., I was in the kitchen, nursing my third cup of coffee, when it hit me. I didn't need to wait for Derek to admit anything. I didn't need his confession. I already had enough. And I had something better than revenge. I had dignity, truth, and a son who deserved to see his mother rise, not crumble. I picked up my phone and called my best friend Aisha. She answered groggily, "Girl, do you know what time? I need you." Her tone changed instantly. "Say no more. I'm coming over." By 6 a.m., she was sitting across from me in her sweatpants, no makeup, hair still wrapped in a scarf. That's the kind of friend Aisha was. No judgment, just presence. I told her everything. The whisper from Rachel. The late nights. The way he snuck in. The kiss outside her office. "Vanessa," she said quietly, "you've been carrying this alone for way too long." I kept thinking maybe I was imagining it, I admitted, voice trembling. I didn't want to destroy our family over a suspicion, but now I can't unsee it. Aisha leaned forward. "So what's the plan?" That's when I paused. I hadn't thought about that. Then I looked at the living room TV, and something clicked. "We have a dinner planned at home Saturday. You remember? Derek's boss, his business partner, and a couple from the country club." He made a whole thing about it, wanted to show off the house. Aisha raised an eyebrow. "Okay, and?" "I'm going to let him have his show. But this time, I'm writing script." I spent the next 2 days preparing like I was prepping for war, but with grace. I wasn't out to scream or throw things. That's what people expected of a scorned woman. I was going to handle this with precision. I went through Derek's office files when he was gone, business receipts, hotel invoices, even private messages he left open on his synced tablet. Nothing illegal, but enough to make a few jaws drop. The more I found, the calmer I became, because the truth was a kind of power I hadn't felt in years. Then, I called in a favor from one of my former patients' dads who worked in AV tech. I asked if he could help me connect my phone to the living room TV via screen mirror, set on a silent trigger. He didn't ask questions, just smiled and said, "You say the word, I'll make it happen." Saturday came fast. Derek was dressed sharp, wearing a smug smile as he checked the wine glasses in the playlist. He kissed my cheek like nothing was wrong, like we were the picture-perfect couple hosting the perfect dinner. And I smiled back. Not because I forgave him, but because the last performance was about to begin, and I was the one directing the final act. The house looked perfect. Candles flickered softly on the dining table. The dishes were set white porcelain with silver trim, Derek's favorite. Soft jazz played through the speakers, blending into the gentle hum of polite laughter and glasses clinking. Derek was in his element, shaking hands, pouring wine, making shallow jokes about stocks and golf swings. His business partner, Paul, was already half a glass in, while Derek's boss, a polished man named Calvin, spoke about expansion plans in Tampa. Everyone was dressed well, the kind of people who used their wealth as a personality trait. I moved around the kitchen and living room like the perfect hostess, smiling, topping off drinks, laughing in the right places. But beneath the smile, my heart drummed steadily. Not with fear, with purpose. Because I wasn't nervous about what was going to happen. I was ready. Rachel arrived 15 minutes late. She wore a sleek red dress, low cut, like she wasn't walking into someone else's home but into her own twisted fantasy. I felt my stomach tighten at the sight of her, but I didn't blink. I just greeted her like she was any other guest. Her eyes darted to Derek, just for a second, but I saw it, that flicker of something secret, something smug. She had no idea. Dinner began. The roast was perfect, the conversation flowed, and I played the part of the devoted wife with an Oscar-worthy grace. When dessert was served, my homemade tiramisu, everyone leaned back in their chairs, full and content. Derek raised a glass. "I just want to thank my beautiful wife, Vanessa," he said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "She's the heart of this home, and tonight is proof of how lucky I am." A few people clapped softly, a couple awes. I turned and smiled. "Thank you, Derek. That means so much coming from you." And then I picked up the small remote I had hidden beneath the centerpiece. "Actually, I wanted to show everyone a little video," I said sweetly. "Something personal, a little surprise." Derek's hand twitched, but he tried to keep smiling. "What's this about, honey?" I just turned toward the living room. The massive flat screen lit up behind us, hijacking the ambient music. And then, silence. The video played. First, the dinner reservation confirmation from Derek's private email booked under a different name, but with our shared credit card. Then photos from a hotel lobby captured by a friend Aisha had sent. Then, a blurry but undeniable clip of Derek's hand resting on Rachel's lower back as they exited a restaurant, laughing like teenagers. The room was dead quiet. Rachel choked on her wine. Paul blinked like he was trying to wake up from a dream. Calvin's expression darkened, eyes flicking from screen to Derek. I kept watching their faces more than the video. Especially Derek's. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. His face said it all: panic, humiliation, rage boiling just beneath the surface. But most of all, disbelief, like he never thought I would have the strength to expose him. The final frame froze on a message Derek had texted Rachel just days ago. "She's clueless. Just smile and play nice until I figure things out." The room exploded. Rachel stood up and bolted toward the door, brushing past a stunned couple who had no idea what they had just witnessed. Derek followed her, stammering something incoherent, trying to salvage whatever he thought he had left. I didn't move. I just picked up my wine glass, turned to the guests who remained, and said, "Dessert is still warm if anyone wants to stay." Nobody did. Within 10 minutes, the house was empty. The silence afterward was deafening but not painful. For the first time in years, it was peaceful. I stood alone in the mess of a perfectly executed dinner, knowing the truth had finally done what I never could with words. It revealed everything. And I didn't feel broken. I felt free. The morning after the dinner felt strangely calm. I woke up to the sun pouring through the blinds, casting long golden lines across the hardwood floor. No text from Derek, no calls, not even a knock at the door, just silence. I brewed my coffee the way I always did, strong, no sugar, and sat by the window in the kitchen. I could still smell the roast from the night before, lingering like a ghost. My house was finally quiet. No pretending, no tiptoeing around Derek's moods or carefully dancing between his lies. Rachel had gone completely off the radar. Word got around fast. My neighbor Cheryl said she saw Rachel moving bags into the back of an Uber that same night. Derek? He didn't come home. Not for a day, not for a week, not even after his boss let him go quietly, just days after that dinner. Apparently, Calvin wasn't a fan of business partners who couldn't manage their own homes or secrets. For a while, I thought he might come crawling back. But he didn't. Instead, he left his wedding ring in an envelope on the porch, with a note that read, "I didn't think you had it in you. Guess I was wrong." I smiled. Because he was right about one thing. I hadn't always had it in me. I used to shrink myself to fit inside the mold of a perfect wife. I used to swallow my suspicions, smooth over his outbursts, and convince myself it was just stress, just work, just pressure. I thought if I cooked well enough, stayed quiet enough, and looked pretty enough, he'd stop wandering. He never did. But what changed wasn't him. It was me. I started listening to that quiet voice inside the one that had been whispering for years. You deserve more than this. And for once, I listened. I sold the house. Too many ghosts in the walls. Too many fake smiles and nights of waiting up. I downsized to a smaller place by the lake, just me and my books and the view. And I started teaching piano again. It had been years since I played seriously, but my hands remembered. And the kids? They reminded me that joy doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it's just a chord played right, or a child nailing a song for the first time. One of my students asked me if I had a husband. I told her, I used to, but now I just have peace. She nodded like she understood. Derek tried contacting me once in email, a few months later. He was remorseful, he said. He had made a mistake. He hoped we could talk. I never replied, because some conversations don't need closure. They need silence. And Rachel? Well, rumor has it she moved out of state. No forwarding address, no new job, just a woman who played a long game and lost everything in one night. She underestimated the quiet wife. Most people do. If I've learned anything, it's this. Dignity doesn't come from expensive coats, lavish dinners, or fancy homes. It comes from choosing yourself even when it terrifies you. It comes from knowing your worth, even when the person sleeping beside you doesn't. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is wait. Wait for the lie to collapse under its own weight. Wait for the moment when silence becomes your sharpest weapon, and when it does use it, because truth doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just walks calmly out the front door and never looks back.